All right, welcome back to another Right Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright, and we are in Speaker Studio.
Here we are.
Awesome.
Here we are doing it again. So, Brian, first college football playoff game officially happened last night. Indiana versus Notre Dame. I predicted Notre Dame.
You did.
With a
You
thorough kind of victory.
I was completely wrong.
Yeah, you know what? You were kind of going the reverse Rudy, the underdog. You wanted that to happen. I liked where your heart was at.
It was wrong.
Not as much where your mind was at.
Yeah.
So I was actually at a Christmas party, great function last night, had a good time. Was watching the game kind of from the bar a little bit, and then got home and saw the end of it. Indiana made it close at the end. They scored a touchdown late.
Yeah.
They got an onside kick. Kind of made, and then couldn't get the second onside kick, but football, sports are crazy in that way. Crazy things happen. So I was close to turning it off. I was like, let's hang on. You never know. I don't want to miss
There were
this.
a couple of situations where there's like 11 minutes to go, and it was 4th and 11. They were on like the 45 on their side, and they decided to punt. At that point, I felt like the game was over because what you noticed is the skill guys wasn't that big of a difference, but it was clearly the linemen. I mean, on both sides.
The trenches, yeah.
The QB for Indiana didn't have enough time or didn't step up enough. There were just too many athletes that Notre Dame was able to throw at them from a lineman standpoint. And then from a skill set standpoint, it was really even hard to tell because the linemen weren't necessarily doing enough to give those guys a chance to showcase themselves. But yeah, it was domination. The thing that I thought was interesting, I wonder what that score would have been if that was Alabama who got in over Indiana.
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama, Notre Dame, at Notre Dame.
It's a different ballgame.
I think that's probably, in hindsight's 2020, probably the same thing is going to happen with SMU when they play. But,
Well, we talked about it a little bit with Indiana didn't play a super tough Big Ten schedule. They scheduled.
They played who they played.
They had a couple tough games scheduled, but you do those schedules 2, 3, 4 years out, and you just don't know what's going to from a non-conference perspective.
Absolutely.
And then, for whatever reason, the only real team they played in the Big Ten this year was Ohio State, and
they got handled.
I watched that game, and they got handled pretty well. Yeah. So I think they're again clearly a really solid team. Had a great season. But just weren't physically ready, didn't have the depth, didn't have the strength, that sort of thing. And Notre Dame, I think, kind of did what most people expected them to do.
Yeah, and Riley Leonard, old Duke
yeah.
QB, and you almost hate to see it. It's so bizarre to see guys that you recognize from one team to another team. Now it is pro sports.
Bouncing all around. Yeah, absolutely. So we got 3 games today going on.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about all 3. Let's start. We'll go in chronological order as they're scheduled. So the first one, SMU versus Penn State. What are your thoughts on that one, Brian?
It may be very similar, but I feel like SMU, whenever they were playing Clemson, they had enough guys mentioned that were from Miami. I think they had like 5 guys from Miami. A handful of those were linemen. And so you feel like it's not going to be the same case that we saw with Indiana where they just get completely dominated by the physicality of their opponent. And so I do think this is going to be a much better game, but going to Penn State.
It's in Happy Valley. I'm sure they'll have a whiteout going on. The Penn State's a 7.5-point favorite.
Wow.
So whatever that means to you. SMU coming from Dallas. I don't know if weather's going to be a factor, right? There's a big difference between.
How much do you think that makes a difference? Like when you played back in the day, and obviously you were Northeast teams, how long did it take you to acclimate to where you felt like you were different? Like, no. I can handle this better than a Southern team or whatever. It takes a few days. I feel like.
It took me a couple months. Like, I did not.
So you do think there is an advantage to being located in the weather that you're playing in?
Well, there's the old adage about the Tampa Bay Bucks didn't win a game under 40 degrees or whatever. Or Miami Dolphins, the same thing, right? Those sort of things. Personally, I did not like playing in the cold at all. I mean, baseball is a little more feel, like as a pitcher especially.
For sure.
Your hands wrung when you're hitting.
Oh, for sure.
So it took me a long time to. I remember specifically playing in Pennsylvania one year, and I was listening to the news, and the news people were like, "It's 85 degrees today. Oh, stay inside if you can. You're gonna melt." And I was like,
"Yes."
I've been waiting for it to get to 85 for like months. I'm like, when's it gonna be 95? I liked pitching. I liked being able to sweat, that sort of thing. So I think it definitely plays a factor. Football is a little more. It's a little more mental. I'm sure you'll see some SMU guys come out in pregame with no shirts on.
Yeah,
They'll play the tough guy act, and
yeah,
there's a lot of that goes on in football, not as much in baseball.
that's true.
So
100%.
so I think it is a factor. The thing I'm really excited to see is how Kevin Jennings, the quarterback at SMU, handles the defense at Penn State. Kevin Jennings, I think, is a real difference maker and will dictate how this game goes. He can do it with his arm. He can do it with his feet. If he gets out of the pocket and runs, it changes the game, right? You get one of those plays where you scramble for 30 yards. All of a sudden, you flip the field. You're in field goal range. You're putting points on the board. So
And a
I think
quarterback
if,
that can really run truly
yeah.
makes it 11-11, right? Opposed to,
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah.
anyway, go ahead. I'm
And
sorry.
I see if you watch the Clemson SMU game, the ACC championship, he had a really rough first quarter. After that, he kind of controlled the game.
I agree.
And you had to put a hat on him. You had to account for him at all times. He wasn't just sitting in the pocket. So I think Kevin Jennings is going to the quarterback. I mean, big surprise. He's going to be the difference maker. But I still think Penn State probably kind of similar to Notre Dame has a little more strength, a little more depth, a little more.
Are you going? Would you take the points if you were a betting man? I know you're not.
7.5. I would. I'd take SMU to cover.
Would.
Yeah.
I agree. I think 100%. The running back that I can't think of, low number one for SMU, is such a competitor, and he's a difference maker.
Rashard Smith. Yeah.
Yeah, can really move. And then the quarterback, and they've got skill guys. And I think the difference between them and Indiana, they've got guys probably not as enough depth to probably compete with a lot of SEC schools, but they're first level guys.
Yeah.
Especially if they keep the plays low on the defensive side as far as how much they got to defend.
Yep.
I think they're going to be fine.
Absolutely. Okay. So I think we're both leaning towards Penn State. But what is
No. I'm going SMU.
Are you going SMU?
Yeah. Well, SMU to keep it within 7.5.
Oh, to cover. Okay,
yes.
to cover. Okay,
Yeah.
both think Penn State's going to win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close game. 27-24.
Take your gambling hat off. Put on your.
Well, it's hard for me, and this is the reason I'm such a bad gambler. I find teams that I kind of like their story or like kind of what they've done, and I want to pull for them, and so then I gamble with
your heart,
with my heart, and that's a good way to lose.
That's how Vegas is just looking for guys like you out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Those guys in Vegas are pretty smart. They didn't build all those buildings in the middle of the desert for
nothing,
for no reason. Yeah. All right, next game. My beloved Clemson Tigers versus the Texas Longhorns. Texas, 13.5 point favorite. Big odds there.
Seems really strong. Now, the thing you got to remember on these spreads, a lot of times they're driven by the betting. Like how many people are betting, how many. So I really don't think. I think Texas probably wins, but it's a 7. 7.5 feels like more of a legitimate line. Yeah. I think it's been driven to 13.5 just because SEC, because of Texas, because of those biases they're kind of in place. It's not really being driven by, that they think they're a 13.5 point favorite. It's driven by the people, how much money is already on Texas.
Well, and a lot of people weren't thrilled that Clemson won the ACC and essentially kind of booted Alabama out.
Correct.
And maybe a couple other teams, right? So Clemson did what they needed to do, won the ACC, but got that 12th and final seed. But I think that Clemson's going to have to probably slow the game down, really rely on Phil Maffa to carry the ball, get those 3-4 yard chunks, Kate Klubnik to hit some short passes, control the clock, control the game. And then on defense, create some turnovers.
Yeah, and you look at Maffa, I think he's been dinged up.
He has
a torn labrum and trying to play through that, wearing some type of flap jacket. And the 2 weeks that he had, I think you'll see him, like casual fans, I've spoke to some casual fans of just college football and hadn't seen Clemson very much. And like, Maffa, dude, he's not that great. Well, he's playing with a torn labrum.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think you're going to see him with 2 weeks. He's going to be a different runner. The freshmen that really have been coming on for Clemson receiver-wise are going to make a difference, and you're going to have just truly if Clemson plays a complete game, they got a chance to win.
So they played a complete, and that's what Dabo said the whole time. We haven't played a complete game all year.
Yeah,
they played complete quarters, complete halves. I mentioned I was at the NC State Clemson game back in September. They played 3 quarters, and then State scored a little bit at the end. They played a great first quarter against SMU in the ACC championship and then held on.
Yep.
If they play a full game, they're as talented as anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure they got the depth of some of
well,
these.
and
Yeah.
that goes back to Dabo's stance on NIL and transfers and things like that, right? So I would agree to that, but I think starting first couple groups as strong as anybody, and that's where they get beat is the amount of depth that other teams have.
I agree. I agree 100%. So,
In my heart wants to pull for Clemson. I think Texas probably wins this one.
you 13.5, more than 13.
I think Clemson covers the spread as well.
I agree. I agree. Texas wins. Clemson covers the spread.
Yeah. So last game of the day is ABC, ESPN. They put it in prime time for a reason. They think it's going to be the best one. Tennessee versus Ohio State. So I like the compare and contrast of the SEC versus the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Even like the colors, kind of the traditional red and garnet and silver versus the.
Do you like Tennessee's new unis that they always busting out, like the black, or you like tradition?
I don't like the Tennessee orange, just kind of period. I think it's kind of a.
Right, but have you
putrid
seen the blacks that they do? They do some really cool
blacks
black
with the orange.
Yeah. So are you into like a bunch of uniforms, or you like the traditional uniforms and you get to
I spoke on this before. Like Oregon had, if you don't have one uniform, you don't have any uniform. Like you need a home. I like a home, a road, and an alternative.
Right.
I don't.
You don't like 18 different.
No,
options.
if you've got 18, it's not a uniform at that point. It's a costume, or you're going into your closet. Just like, what am I going to wear today? Let's pick out. You got 20 shirts. Let's pick out one. Like that's not a uniform. That's just shirts with the same.
Where's this
color
game at?
pattern.
It's in
Ohio State. It's in Columbus.
So that place is gonna be off the chain.
Yeah. So Ohio State at the Horseshoe, 7-point favorite. I like Tennessee in this game.
Straight up money line win.
I think they're gonna win. Yeah. I think a little more speed. I don't think Ohio State has seen anything like that. The one time they played a really tough team in Michigan, or a semi-tough team
that could maybe match up with them. And they tried to pound the ball against Michigan instead of throw the ball, which is their talent and which is their advantage against most teams. Tennessee's been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Right. They've had games where they could literally look like they could win the national championship, and they've had games where it looks like they're mid-tier SEC team, which is still a good team. But I do think it's going to be a challenge for Ohio State. This is I don't disagree with ESPN. I think this is going to be the best game. But I do think Tennessee going into the shoe, how much? And I know bettors put some money on it, and it makes a difference. And these guys aren't like 18, 19-year-old freshmen anymore. Even if you're a freshman, you played an entire season. You probably have to do silent count, and you have to do some things to alter your offense to make sure it flows. But how much do you think like opposing arenas, fields, how much does that make a difference?
It definitely matters, but I think coaches have gotten a lot wiser. They prepare their players for it a whole lot more. We've seen players bringing on speakers onto the field, blasting speakers, making sure that teams are ready for that sort of thing.
Right.
Coaches now are better prepared from a lot of perspectives than back in the day. You had tape on people, tape on teams, players, but you didn't understand the atmosphere. Like everything's on TV now, or socials, or you've been there a couple times.
Music in there,
so you understand what's going on. You understand the tradition. So I think coaches can better prepare. And the really good coaches are the ones who prepare their teams for the little things, right? John Wooden famously talked to his players about, hey, this is how you put your socks on. This is how you tie your shoes.
How would you have done with that?
Personally?
Yeah.
If he's telling me to do it, he's already won 7 national titles. I'm going to I should put my socks on that way probably. That's,
I don't know. My nature is to buck. I don't know. I like, again,
I was told by a pitching coordinator one time that I was too coachable. And looking back, sometimes I wish I would have pushed back a little bit on a couple things from my career. But my thought was always, this is the coach. He knows what he's talking about because he's the coach, and he'll tell me.
As you matured, has that thought process changed a little bit?
Well,
not when you talk about Sox and John Wooden, but just in general.
As we're coaches now, and we see a lot of these other people out here coaching travel teams, I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. Good hearts, good. Thanks for being out there, but that's
Well,
wrong.
and sometimes it's debatable about the good hearts.
Yeah,
Sometimes
well, I don't
it's
know.
ego and
But
yeah,
but my thought was that, especially like pro baseball, like these guys get paid to do this. This
yeah.
is they've seen a lot of things.
Well, when I was with the Indians, the thing that I liked, at least for the first year, they drafted you for a reason. They weren't allowed to adjust you at all.
Mess with your
And I
yeah
think that was John Farrell, who's obviously he was with Boston for a
yeah
minute
yeah
and done had some success. And I think that was his drive. Hey, we drafted these guys for a reason. We don't want them to come here and then immediately be coached
and
and
turn
be
them into
changed.
robots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so again, baseball, football, totally different when it comes in that aspect. But when it comes down to coming back to arenas, dude, I do think it makes a difference, and I think it makes a difference again. Tennessee, not that it's warm there this time of year,
yeah.
but you and I both know getting to that area in Ohio or you go to Chicago, that cold is different.
It's a different cold. Yeah,
It's not southern cold; it's a different cold.
yeah.
I do think it has a tendency to slow the game down, and athletic guys aren't quite as athletic.
Yeah.
It'll be
And
interesting
there's
to see.
also the chance too that like if you're coached the right way or if you have the right mentality, that you feed off of that crowd
For
noise.
sure,
You feed
for
off
sure.
of that. People telling you you're the worst and they want you. They want you to fumble every play, whatever it is, right? That can
I
be
can't
that
imagine
can
what
be
kids are
motivating.
getting told today. Like when they go into an arena, like when again, baseball is so different. We went into some places in college where people harassed us a little bit. And most of the time it was
Yeah,
some good fun. And pro baseball, you'd have a heckler here or there, but he was usually funny. I can't imagine.
yeah. Well, I went. So I was down at Clemson a few weeks ago. I talked to Peyton Page, so the D lineman there, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, what place in the ACC is the toughest for you to play? Like what crowd is like kind of the most ruthless?" And it really surprised me. He said Pittsburgh,
Well,
and
that's just the people.
well, that's what he said. He said he went there his freshman year, and he's like, man, we go to South Carolina. People are mean, but it's more
In good fun.
it's
Almost good.
more yeah, like football. He's like the people in Pitt were just mean, like talking about my family and
I'd done the research.
yeah, like they were just
Yeah.
like truly like bitter. And he was like that. He's like, so that was. He said that was the toughest thing for me because I was a freshman and I heard some stuff that was like I had never even imagined hearing. Like this was crazy. So that was an interesting answer to me because like you don't think of Pitt as being like
Yeah, tough
Yeah.
place to go play.
yeah. But that was interesting. So one other story we want to touch on today. So Michael Vick got named head coach of Norfolk State.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Michael Vick.
Yeah.
So joining the ranks of the HBCU, kind of predecessors of Deion Sanders and clearly a lot of others, but Eddie George. So former players who are doing it now. So go back to Michael Vick as a player, just a phenomenal, literally generational talent. One of the truly great runner, thrower, just mobile quarterbacks. But then obviously got into a little trouble with the everything that happened with the dog fighting in 2007, 8, that kind of range.
Bad news kennels.
Bad news, yeah,
Kind of an omen.
yeah, obviously, yeah,
Yeah.
just terrible, terrible things, and
But you almost wonder, like, I'm sure we didn't. I had friends and obviously never had that kind of money. But dude, if you had your boys that you grew up with, we all grew up with different people, and I mean, I know he was involved to some extent, but it was truly just a cultural thing that. I mean, I grew up in small town, and I saw people do things that would probably offend here and there. But growing up in the environment he grew up, I'm sure he didn't even really think there was anything wrong with it. Honestly,
Yeah.
dogfighting, obviously, it's clearly wrong, clearly against the law. But it's kind of one of those gray areas that, hey, the police got bigger fish to fry than worry about some dogfighting.
Yeah.
But clearly that wasn't the case
yeah,
because
Peter didn't think so.
Yeah, and it changed his career. Changed his career.
So it
forever.
changed his life, right? And I thought at that time he was done.
Oh, I did. Too.
Like he's not. But he came back. He played in the NFL again. Then he got a job at Fox, was commentating.
Yeah.
And now does this. So a couple things, right? One, he did the right things. He apologized.
Yeah.
He admitted mistake. He admitted error.
Yeah.
He realized, like he
He
came
come
to the
across as
realization.
humbled.
Come across, yeah,
Yeah.
very humble. Like
one of the best athletes to ever play the position, and in that position, you got to come across as confident or
Yeah.
sometimes arrogant. But after that, truly came across, and maybe legitimately so. Famously, the coach for Tampa Bay, what's his name?
Tony Dungy.
Yeah, mentored him kind of
Yeah.
back through, and really humbled himself, and kind of a example of how you come back.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? So we talk about Pete Rose, Pete Rose denied, kind of admitted, and I think fully admitted, right?
Yeah.
But Vick, like, see, he humbled himself.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, man, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this. I'm going to pay my penance." And people are forgiving. People want to give you a second
It's kind of
chance.
interesting though in society, and this is whole maybe a different conversation for a different time. But like, I feel like masses, whether it be media or people, love to build people up really quickly, maybe
Oh,
too fast,
oh yeah.
and then love to tear them down and
Yep.
just crush them too fast.
Yep.
And
Especially into like with all the social medias, you can become a star, not overnight, but
really
but
quickly.
really quick.
Yeah.
You can get your 15 minutes, maybe a little more.
And then
the next thing is
has done some,
she's done great with hers. Yeah,
yeah.
she's
Except she
turned
come
into
out
good
with a
things.
coin that's she's getting sued now a little bit because
I
she come
haven't
out with a
seen that.
meme.
I don't follow her. I know that.
Yeah. It's not something I necessarily follow, but I have seen. But yeah, you talk about really quick somebody who became a star,
Yeah.
and
Just for being nothing
for
just
a
being
couple
stupid.
words, and then even more so in sports.
Yeah.
And how quickly somebody can. But it's awesome that I tell you what, Deion Sanders' legacy may be opening doors for other professional
absolutely.
players,
Yeah.
and showing an avenue for the HBCUs that hey, you can become a place that people want to go.
Yeah.
Because we got guys who've got experience that would match and kind of, now obviously Deion left, but the flip side is even if Vick does really well and he ends up at Virginia Tech or ends up somewhere else, he's done great. I'm sure that means he's done really good things for Norfolk State as well. So
yeah, so hopefully he'll have some success there. That'll be a fun story to track and keep seeing what happens over there. So, all right, so enjoy those games today. We'll be watching from well, not that couch because there's no TV here, but we'll be watching from a couch somewhere. So, but make sure you subscribe, follow, like us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. We're on all the Apple Pod, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you can find podcasts. We appreciate y'all listening. Enjoy your sports day.
out, go Pack.